Garrett Whitlock struggles in his season debut against the Rays. Is it time to panic?
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Jake Nizuski, and here, as always, with my co-host, in essence, Lauren Willand. And it's a tough day for the people who are riding for Garrett Whitlock to be the starter, and then people who want Garrett Whitlock in the bullpen are having a little bit of a parade. But in my mind, it's one start. He struggled a little bit, went 5 innings, allowed 8 hits, 5 earned runs, struck out 5, but he did allow 3 home runs. Ultimately looked a little bit shaky, but you're going against a really good Rays lineup.
That's the thing, and I know that I've said I want Garrett Whitlock in the bullpen, and I am willing to give him an honest shot as a starter, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to sit here and hit the panic button. I mean, we've seen many of these starters struggle their first time, and he's still recovering from the hip surgery. He's probably not 110%. And you did see some good things from there. Sure, the back-to-back home runs stunk. 3 total definitely is not what you want to see, but there were still good things to take from this start. And, you know, if he's 3, 4, 5 starts in and he's still doing this, yes, okay, then we need to reevaluate where he belongs in this rotation. But after one start, it's like Chris Sale, it's like Corey Kluber, Cutter Crawford, who insert starter here. I'm not going to sit here and say, that's it, he belongs in the bullpen. I mean, we know how I feel about that. But you can't expect the world from him in the first start. Yes, right. You wanted more. Yes, you wanted a better, cleaner start. But that's why there's start number 2 in the next 5 days.
Exactly. And, you know, the one thing that I think was the positive out of this is he was throwing strikes. You know, he made 85 pitches, 62 of them were strikes. And, you know, we saw a little bit in his early starts last season. He struggled, you know, throwing walks. And that was one of the biggest things that, you know, Dave Bush, the pitching coach, said. He's like, you know, he threw strikes, but, you know, he went up against, you know, a tough lineup. But I think he's ready to pitch in the big leagues. And, you know, the home run ball, looking at some of the pitches that he allowed home runs off of, they weren't, you know, pitches where you were like, oh yeah, that's 100% a home run. You know, the one to Yandy Diaz, yeah, that was up in the zone. Yeah. You know, maybe you shouldn't have thrown it up there, but the one to Brandon Lowe, that was down in the zone, you know, closer to where his knees were. And you know, he's just a good enough hitter to be able to muscle that off and get over the fence. And, you know, we saw him in his Worcester rehab start. He allowed a home run, and, you know, maybe it's, you know, him getting his pinpoint control down and more trying to fool the batters rather than, you know, putting it in a place where, you know, they can muscle balls off of him. Because, you know, he did allow 8 hits or so. So, you know, that's one thing that, you know, he's definitely got to improve upon.
100%. And, you know, we're not going to sit here and overanalyze one start, but there are things that he needs to improve on right away, so we don't have to go in and overanalyze the next start. And, you know, I agree with Dave Bush. I think that, of course, he's ready to pitch in the majors. We saw that last year in a different role, but we saw that where he can be super duper effective and be a solid pitcher for this team. I really hope that can translate into a starting role. I want him to be able to succeed, and I want the Red Sox to have that depth, especially, I mean, the offense has been silenced the last 2 games, but you can look at this pitching and be like, okay, there's still some positives to this team, to this series. But overall, Whitlock just needs to take the next few days, look over what went wrong, work closely with Dave Bush, and right those wrongs. We know it can happen. We've seen it with several other pitchers. And again, it's the first start. There's going to be kinks to work out, and now it's just on Whitlock to work those out.
Right. And, you know, his message after the game was, he said, you know, obviously not the way I wanted it to go, but at least, you know, it's good to be back a part of the team again. I think that's what, you know, probably a lot of players in the clubhouse are feeling, is just getting guys back to being healthy and starting to get the full squad back together again, especially the rotation. And then, you know, guys will have their defined roles and then just hit the ground running. And, you know, I think, you know, especially with what we saw with Bello, which we're going to speak more about in our second segment in his rehab start with the Woo Sox, like that was a nice positive. But, you know, I think another positive outside of, you know, Whitlock's start sort of putting a dagger in things, is Connor Wong threw out 2 runners stealing. That was the first time the Red Sox catcher has caught a runner stealing in the first 10 games so far. That's definitely a positive.
It is a positive. I wish we'd see more from him at the plate, because it's just like, what is going on at the plate with Connor Wong? And yes, he's still young. There's probably a lot to work out in his first major league season, as presumably first full major league season. But with how the runners were running all over Reese McGuire this season so far, we saw it a lot throughout the series with the Orioles and the Pirates. It was nice to finally see the Red Sox figure out that, how to throw runners out. And hopefully Reese McGuire now can do that, because we can't have runners running all over the team like this. And that was definitely positive to see. And it was good that they weren't, it was a 7-2 game, right? So it's like, at that point, did it even really matter who was scoring, who wasn't? But it was still good to keep those guys off the base path, and to see that kind of defensive ability from the catcher that we really haven't been able to see from McGuire early on in the season. But now we just need Wong to step up that offense.
Right. And, especially for Wong, I think, these first 2 months are really vital for him to show that he belongs, because, Alfaro in March, or excuse me, at the beginning of June, that's his first minor league opt-out. And so he either has the opportunity to, look for more opportunities, or the Red Sox got to give him an opportunity in the big leagues. But, I think especially in this first month, you got to evaluate, would you rather take Wong's defense like you saw with those 2 runners thrown out, or, take Alfaro's offense? Because, I don't think, if Alfaro was behind the plate in this game, he would have come anywhere close to throwing out either of those runners, because the balls that, Wong put or pinpoint right in front of the bag, and it was really difficult for a runner to not get thrown out, especially with where he was throwing it. And even the Randy Arozarena one, like it was looked at on replay, and it was a bang play, but it wouldn't have been bang if Wong didn't make that throw. So I think I agree, he's definitely got to step up the offense, but he's not alone. Christian Arroyo, I don't know where he's been at the plate. Justin Turner as well.
Hernandez.
Kike Hernandez. And, the other thing too with that, why was he in the leadoff spot like that? I don't understand it. I've never seen that be like a tactic to sort of, be a spark plug for a guy to get out of a slump.
I don't necessarily think it was that. I think it was the pitcher who was on the mound, and that was kind of Cora's plan. I wasn't there. I wasn't talking to Cora. I don't make these lineup decisions, but yeah, it's interesting. Hernandez is in quite the slump right now, and I don't know if putting him in that leadoff spot would help. Didn't do anything on Tuesday, but it's still very early on in the season. These guys are still getting their legs under them. They're getting the feel for their swing, but it is concerning when you have somebody who is not necessarily the face of the franchise, but has been tabbed as kind of a leader in this clubhouse, struggling as much as he has. I think he'll be fine eventually. I think that when you're making errors at shortstop, you're struggling defensively. It's kind of all catching up to him, being like, I need to do something, and maybe it's just a bunch of overthinking. I will be interested to see in the lineup today. I know Cora said that there was going to be people who are going to sit, and then they have the afternoon game on Thursday. So, and we knew this leadoff position wasn't going to be somebody for 100 games, 162 games. We knew it was going to be different, but to put someone who's struggling and then goes 0 for 5, I was just like, oh man, like just not a lot is going right for the Red Sox right now. And there's no reason to panic, but it's just kind of like, this is feeling very, very reminiscent of last year.
I agree. And, I get, the aspect of, switching in and out at the leadoff spot, but especially with how hot, Verdugo's been, I don't know why you don't just like keep him there, especially against a pitcher like McClanahan. And, especially with Kike, has 3 hits, obviously you mentioned, the 5 errors. So it's a tough pill to swallow when you see a guy has more errors than he does have hits. And, he sort of, spoke with, reporters last night about it and said, when you go over a week without a hit, it's going to be tough at any point in the year, no matter when it is. Just plain and simple, it sucks. I need to be better. I was laughing, when I brought this tweet up, somebody commented in the replies, can we exchange it for JBJ? I thought that was hysterical. But I think I'm starting to, continue to remind myself. I think, other fans got to remind themselves. It's only been 10 games so far, even though, it's really nice to have baseball back. Like a week feels like pretty long because we haven't had consistent baseball for a few months or so. And so, we're starting to overanalyze these very small sample sizes and, be like, oh my God, is this Kike Hernandez for the rest of the season? No, but like at the same time, yes, he's got to step it up.
I think that can be said for a lot of people in this lineup that they need to step it up. They need to figure out how to get these bats going because, I mean, you had Rafael Devers strike out 3 times looking, once with the bases loaded to open this series. And that game was such a fun pitcher's duel that he could have just blown that game open right there. Yeah. They need to start kind of being more aggressive at the plate and not necessarily swinging at everything like we saw last year, but be patient enough to wait for your pitch, but don't be having the bat way down on your shoulder when there should be a pitch that you should absolutely swing at. So there's a lot, in this, and we knew this because we knew this lineup wasn't filled with power. And this, I mean, Adam Duvall's injury is already being felt in the immediacy of his absence. So there needs to be that next man up mentality. There's not really a huge power bat in that lineup. Right-handed hitters, there's not a ton there. And this is where the next man up mentality needs to come in, where they don't need to swing for the fences, but they need to put that ball in play.
I agree. And, the one thing that I've seen from the bats that has been really intriguing is, their plate presence and patience as well. 5 walks last night. Obviously, they struck out 10 times, but at the same time, it's much nicer, when you look at the rest of the box scores throughout the first, 10 games or so, or 9 games outside of this one. They've done a really good job of just getting on base through the free pass outside of what we saw last season, where they were just swinging for everything. And, I'd rather have that, I'd rather have more walks rather than, guys swinging for everything. Because, you not only drive up the pitcher's pitch count, but then you also get more ducks in the pond. And, that sometimes correlates to more runs. But you got to have those guys in the lineup that are going to be able to drive in those runs. And, we saw the Sox only muster, 2 runs in this one against the Rays. First run came off of a double play, which I was like, classic Sox. And then, Reese McGuire ended up driving Verdugo in on the 9th. But ultimately, I think, this is going to be a continuous thing until, Duvall ultimately comes back or somebody, becomes the spark plug, So at least somebody in the lineup is going to have to step up and, curious to see who that ultimately is. But, we're going to speak more about Brayan Bello's performance in Worcester and, how excited we are with how he ultimately did. And, talk more about, what might have gone right or, potentially gone wrong. But before we do that, I just want to talk to you about FanDuel. So grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's /1 sportsbook. That's because right now new customers can step up to the plate with a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up to place your first bet and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. You can do a Rafael Devers home run. You can do different prop hits for, Christian Arroyo, Justin Turner, hope and pray that they get hot. So then you're ultimately able to win those. But no matter what, don't miss your chance to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So despite, Whitlock struggling in his season debut in the majors, it was nice to see Brayan Bello in his first rehab assignment with an affiliate do a great job. Win 6 innings, only allowed 4 hits, 1 earned run, 0 walks, 4 strikeouts. And, I think the biggest conversation that we had prior to this start was how long was he going to go and how many pitches was he going to make? And he threw 81 and 50 of those were strikes.
Yeah, it was definitely very, very encouraging to see, especially in his first rehab start. He had that forearm tightness. When you hear forearm tightness, you just kind of start to think the worst, that he's just going to go downhill from here. But it was very, very positive, a very strong outing for him. And hopefully on Wednesday, he feels better or feels fine. He doesn't have any kind of lingering soreness, tightness, and that he can either join the Red Sox or have another rehab start to continue to stay stretched out and just kind of get that arm where it needs to be. But I was very encouraged. I was very, very optimistic going into the start just because he's Brayan Bello. We know that he's definitely going to be a huge part of this rotation. And to see that he came out strong, he controlled the strike zone, he controlled his pitches, and went into the sixth through a lot of pitches, a lot more than what I was expecting. So just overall very, very positive. And I think Red Sox fans should be excited about it. Again, it's one start, much like Garrett Whitlock and the Chris Sales and the Corey Klubers. We're not going to read too much into it, but it's still a very good step in the right direction for Bello and for this Red Sox rotation, which doesn't need a whole lot of help. They haven't been the big kryptonite of this team so far, but it's just, if you're going to add him to that rotation and if he's going to do what he did on Tuesday, then he's going to be very dangerous this year.
I think especially when you look at his ability to go 6 innings, because I mean that's going to be vital for this Red Sox bullpen, especially being able to make sure that they aren't overused with different guys in the rotation not being able to go the full length. But looking at his game logs, I mean he only went 6 innings twice last season against the Rangers and then against the Yankees. And obviously this is a minor league rehab start. He's not pitching against major league competition, but at the same time, in your first affiliate rehab start, it's nice to see him, go 6 innings rather than 4. And, also, some other positive stats that came out of it. 9 of his 18 outs were recorded by ground outs, and then 3 of his 4 strikeouts came on sliders. And then the other thing that I think is really intriguing, and, this is a pitch that we've seen Josh Winkowski have a lot of success with. And, it's nice to see Bello, continuing to have success with it as well. Reached 97 miles per hour with his sinker. So, definitely, it seems like a lot of his pitches are where they essentially should be for him to be fully healthy to be back on the major league roster.
Yeah, and like I said, it's an exciting time for this team, for this rotation. And like you said, no, it's not Major League Baseball competition, but it is competition that he's been used to. He spent a lot of time in the minors last year before being called up to the Red Sox. And it was just overall, I just think there's a lot of positives to take from that start and a lot of positives to look forward to. Especially, maybe a pitcher can be the spark plug to this team. I don't know. I mean, we saw Nick Pivetta and not getting the run support, but we have seen that sometimes maybe just a pitcher can come in and kind of set the tone and the offense follows. I don't know. Stranger things have happened.
I agree. And, especially, with potentially Paxton doing another rehab start very soon. Curious to see when that ultimately is scheduled. But with all these guys coming back, I mean, it just helps you feel a little bit more secure about this, Red Sox pitching staff. As you mentioned, it hasn't been particularly the Achilles heel. It's sort of interesting. I think a lot of Red Sox fans would resonate with this. It's either the pitching that's doing well and the bats aren't going well, or it's the other way around. And it's crazy to think, in the first 5 games, it was the pitching that wasn't doing well and the offense was on fire. And then snap of a finger, it just flips right over. So it'll be really nice when, both are simultaneously working very well for the Red Sox. But, all we can do is hope and pray that ultimately happens very, very soon. And, they continue to, try and figure out ways to score runs without Duvall in the lineup because, the schedule isn't getting any easier. They got one more game left against the Rays. And then, it gets even harder after that. Joey Capone and I sort of spoke about like this gauntlet of a schedule that they got, after they ultimately faced the Rays. And, I think this is one thing that, we spoke about a lot during the offseason. They got to be hot, to start April. And, they haven't generally been very hot, in the past few years. But, especially getting that momentum to begin the season is super important.
And it starts today, right? I mean, you can always say it starts today. They still have the chance to tie the series with the Rays. And they can do that, obviously, by just going in there, starting strong, and putting runs on the board, getting those runners across home plate, putting that ball in play. And it doesn't get easier. Then you have Ohtani coming to pitch against you, and it's like, great. Like it doesn't get easier, like you said. And the Rays have had an easier start to their schedule, but they still won these games. They're still finding ways to win those games. And now the Red Sox, they have to do it. It's easy for us to sit here and say you have to win because it's much easier said than done. But they have 2 more games against the Rays. Then you have the Angels, and then you have the Brewers and the Twins. And these are start setting the tone right now. You had it against the Tigers. You had that momentum. We saw that momentum carry into the first game against the Rays. So we know that they can hold the Rays to 1 run. They know that they can pitch well against them. do it today, and then do it again tomorrow, and then do it again against your next series and your next series and your next series.
Well, you know, in this next game, Chris Sale is going to be on the bump, and we're going to preview more of this game today in our next segment. But before we do that, Lauren just wants to talk to you about Pro Baseball GM.
I absolutely love this game, and honestly, I thought that I could probably manage a professional baseball franchise. It turns out it's really not all that easy. And if you've had that same thought, maybe you fantasized about managing your own franchise, go and download Pro Baseball GM immediately. If you're watching on YouTube, just scan that QR code. This game allows you to manage every strategic aspect of a franchise. You play through seasons, you lead your franchise and your fans to glory as you build a hopefully historic dynasty. I haven't had that much luck, but fall down 7 times, stand up 8, or whatever they say. In the simulation, you are responsible for hiring the right coaches and the staff. You manage the team finances. You scout and you draft players. You manage through the difficult personalities. So you kind of have to find out who's that clubhouse cancer, who's not gelling with the rest of the players. Of course, there's injuries that you have to deal with. You navigate your franchise through free agency, all of the ups and downs of a season, much like the Red Sox are going through this year, last year, and even the year before that. But in this challenging and realistic game world, Ultimate Baseball GM, it's completely free. It's playable offline, so you don't need to be connected to Wi-Fi. You can play on the go as you want, when you want to. A bunch of us play on Locked On MLB. A lot of us have our own franchises. Some of us are better than others. Some of us can't get out of our own way. Some of us are doing much better. But if you want to join us, download the game, find us, and we will play against you. Spoiler alert, you're probably going to be better than me. But Locked On Red Sox listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check that out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com. Scan the barcode if you are watching on YouTube, or look it up right in any of your app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today.
So on the bump for Game 3 of the Rays series, Chris Sale for the Red Sox, and then the Rays, their number 1 prospect, Taj Bradley, is going to be making his debut. And let's start off with Sale. I mean, he really bounced back after starting against the Tigers. You know, allowed 4 hits over 3 earned runs, struck out 7. You know, and it was a good bounce back after sort of blowing up against the Orioles, allowing 7 earned runs. But one thing to sort of point out, it's not like it's been 2 or 3 years since Sale has pitched against the Rays. So I guess that's a plus. We saw him do very well in his first start of the 2022 season against the Rays, prior to when he got his pinky blown off against the Yankees. But he went 5 innings, allowed 3 hits, struck out 5 on July 12th of last year. So hopefully, he's able to sort of replicate in that in some way, shape, or form. But this is a much different Rays lineup, a more hot Rays lineup, and he's not going against the Tigers anymore. So he's really got to step up and be able to be a primetime player when it really matters against some of these tough lineups.
Hopefully he can take the momentum that he had from his last outing and throw that into this one and kind of bounce back from his bounce back start and just kind of set the tone for the rest of the series. I think that's kind of the theme of this episode, right? Setting the tone. So he can go out there. It's in his control. And we know that obviously Chris Sale, we know the work ethic. We know that he's probably made some changes from his last outing against the Tigers. And he needs to go out there, and what he does not need to do is walk the first 2 batters. You want to keep the men off those base paths, control the strike zone, locate your pitches, have that good conversation and that good chemistry with your catcher. So I think it's going to be a big start for Sale. It's weird saying that, his 3rd start of the season and like the 12th game of the year. But this is a big start for Sale. He can go out there and he can, prove that, not necessarily that he's back, but that he can be here and be this, not even the ace of the staff, but be this serviceable pitcher, be the reliable pitcher that we know him to be. So, and that we know that he can be. So really big start for Sale on the mound Wednesday. And hopefully we see more vintage Sale than we have seen recent Sale.
I hope so. And, he's going to be going up against a rookie and, in Taj Bradley. And I think that this is sort of a test for the Sox lineup. You've never seen this guy before, so you don't 100% know what you're getting outside of, what you've maybe seen or gotten film from his starts in AAA or last season in AAA and AA. But I think, you really got to take advantage of his inexperience in the majors. do everything you can to get him as uncomfortable as possible in his debut. But, he's number one prospect for the Rays for a reason. And, so far in AAA, he made 2 starts, combined 7 innings, allowed 6 hits, 4 earned runs, struck out 8. But, last season between AA and AAA, mustered a 2.57 ERA over 28 starts. And so very good pitcher. Curious to see sort of what he's going to bring in, if sort of those debut jitters get to him.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. They have to make him uncomfortable, and they have to do that right away. This is a rookie pitcher who they haven't seen before, who he hasn't seen before, this lineup. So now it's time for the Red Sox to jump all over him, do it early and often, make him work, make him throw pitches. Do not make it easy on him. And this lineup has the potential to do that, but they need to do it from the jump. They can't be trying to play catch up in the 3rd inning.
Right. I think, something that we talked about earlier with that plate patience, be as patient as possible. Even though in his past stats, he hasn't thrown a ton of walks. We know, especially with these younger pitchers, when they get in the bright lights, there's times where their control gets away from them. And, the pressure really gets to him, and that correlates to walks. And especially if you're able to drive his pitch count up, that makes him even more nervous. That gets, the Rays bullpen in the game a little bit earlier. Sometimes that's a bad thing. Sometimes it's a good thing. But especially if you're able to get more runners on base than not, you're able to put more pressure on him. Then hopefully, score more runs to ultimately correlate to a win. But we'll see how everything shakes out tonight. But if you want to stay updated with everything that's happening with the Boston Red Sox and you haven't subscribed to Locked On Red Sox yet, make sure to subscribe over on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We post 5 days a week to keep you updated about everything that's going on with the team, as well as bring on different guests from the community, different reporters. We also had Bobby Dalbec on last week. We got a lot more player interviews coming up as well. So make sure to subscribe. And we also want to thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. And make your second listen and check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and over on YouTube. Also, make sure to follow Locked On Red Sox over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. Myself, it's at Jake Iggy. And also Lauren, it's La 3 Laws, Lauren with 4 R's. But as always, we greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. Hope that everybody has a great rest of their day. And I'm going to keep this into the ending. We'll see how long it is. But keep the faith, stay positive. But let's go Sox. Peace.